Hi, I'm Nikki Haverstock, and this is my shirt. I have to share my shirt each time. Please do wash your hands and stay safe. And I'm a self-published author with 14 cozy mysteries and 2 short story cozy mysteries available for sale on Amazon. And I wanted to talk today about writing to market. This is something that kind of gets thrown around a lot. People will say things like, if you want to succeed, you have to write to market. Now, first off, right off the bat, I'm going to say that's not necessarily true, that only people who write to market succeed. I mean, you can look at the Outlander series, a good example, where I don't really know where that market was before she wrote those books, but it's done well. But it's fair to say that you're hedging your bets. So this is the difference between voting, putting like in roulette, putting your bet on black versus 00, which might not make a lot of sense, but basically you have much better odds. So most people say if you want to try to have a career in genre fiction, especially self-publishing, where you're going to have to do all the heavy lifting of the marketing, then writing to market is very helpful. And what that means is you write in a genre, you write kind of right down the center of the genre, and you write in a genre that has an audience. Now, some people will tell you, they'll try to sell you courses and stuff, saying that the way to do that is you look at a graph, you find out what markets are hot, meaning that whatever that means. I shouldn't say that there's one definitive meaning, and that you write in that market regardless of whether or not you're interested. I don't believe that. I'm part of a school of thought. It's certainly not just me. I've heard it a million times, and I truly believe it, that you take what you are good at, whether that's tension, romances, tone, and we're talking about things more than just like, I want to write about dragons. Okay, there's a million dragon books, and I've read some that are very light and fluffy and fun to dark and grim and ghastly. So taking all that and then taking the market and looking at the different genres, the tone, all that, and you find where the Venn diagram where you overlap and you write in that. So for instance, I like writing funny. I like my characters to, in the face of danger, crack a joke. I like puzzles. I like riddles. I like bands of friends, things like that. And so I write in cozy mysteries, and that's just kind of right down the general. Now there's certain things that, to be in the middle of this genre, like my genre, you don't really have on-page cussing. Okay, not a big sacrifice. My characters still cuss, but they do it in the narrative rather than in the dialogue. Meaning that instead of having it written out, the cuss words, mine, I'll have it in the narrative where it says, he walked away cussing a blue streak that would make a sailor blush, or something like that. So my characters aren't necessarily, but it's not as realistic. Some people have that gripe, and that's fine. I have friends who desperately want that all of their books have sex scenes in them, and so they decided, even though they read cozy mysteries, they decided maybe they shouldn't write them because they would want to put in sex scenes, and that's something that possibly could sell, but it was going to be a much harder to find marketing opportunities, and I'll explain that in a second. So that is what I believe, that when people say you should write to market, that the smartest and best way to do that is to take your natural skill set and the existing market and find where they intersect and write in those genres. Luckily, as the publishing sphere gets bigger and bigger, we're seeing more and more niche genres come up. Like I have friends who only write in military, space opera, sci-fi. So sci-fi is a genre. Space opera is a sub sort of group of that, and then they write in only military of that subgenre. So, and they're in a group with just other authors who only write that, and they have readers who only read that, and so over time, one of the genres I write in, paranormal cozies, is like if you took Buffy the Vampire Slayer and then you took Buffy and you picked her up and you dropped her into Murder, She Wrote. So she's a witch, but it's all very cutesy and fun, and a lot of them have like supernatural animals and all that, but it's got this light kind of tone, and they're really fun, and it's basically very clean, fun, light urban fantasy. It's essentially what it is, usually with a murder mystery. Anyway, the idea being that you can find these genres, and the reason why I believe it is so important is that I just don't believe that you can long-term succeed writing a genre you don't love. Now, I know right now you're saying, whoa, 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 I've heard of XYZ. Okay, there are exceptions, but it doesn't mean the rule's broken. A friend gave me an analogy recently when I interviewed her for a podcast, which was to say, if your statement was throwing an egg up against a raw egg up against a wall will break the egg. If you got 100 eggs and you threw them at a wall, 1 or 2 might not break. But does that mean that you're going to say, oh, it's not true that throwing an egg against a wall breaks it? Well, it still breaks it 98 times out of 100. You can try if you want to go and be the 100th. But my question is, if you're thinking of writing, do you want to write in a genre you don't like? Is that really what you want to do? Probably not. So why would you do it? You could, if you're going to write stuff you don't want, you can make much better money ghostwriting for someone, potentially, or copywriting. Or I have a lot of friends who are freelance writers who write like copy for, like, a dermatologist wants to have a full website, and so they pay someone to sit down and write dermatology articles. You could go do that. It'd probably be much better pay. So my first question, is that really what you want to do? And secondly, I think that for every time that you hear one of these stories, there's probably more to the story. There's incredibly high burnout because it's not something you're passionate about. A lot of people who swear that's how you do it don't make their money doing it. Like, perhaps they did it for a couple years and then they switched to ghostwriters, or they did it long enough to say, I proved it, and then they go and they teach courses on how to do it. So there's very few people that you meet that I know of that are full-time, as in paid, they covers all their bills, full-time writers who are writing in genres that they genuinely do not like or read. Now, there is a whole group of people who write in a genre that they used to love and they're getting burned out, or they do read it but they're itching, like they write cozy mysteries but they're, you know, itching to do something grittier, but they didn't start out that way. So let's just start with that. And the reason why I think it's so important to love the genres and the tropes and stuff that you write is I think that I really believe that genre readers are looking for something that's hard to quantify. It's hard to explain. And if you don't love that genre, it's difficult. So for instance, I don't like fish. I don't like, people are like, oh, well, if it's fresh, it doesn't smell like fish. Well, they're right that it doesn't smell bad, but it still smells like fish, and I don't like fish. And I wish I liked fish, and I go with my husband to have sushi, and I can kind of, you know, get it down, but I don't like the taste of seaweed. I don't like, everything tastes just lightly of kind of a fish, and I don't like it. And even the soups taste a little fishy and everything. And so I have a hard time judging good quality Japanese food because I just don't like the inherent taste profile. This isn't a defense of Japanese or an attack on Japanese food. It's just a matter of me saying that I can't judge really. I can probably judge bad Japanese food, like if it, you know, smells like bad fish, like rotten fish, I can probably judge that. But I'm going to miss a lot of the nuances. That's what happens when people are writing in genres that they don't like. You miss it. And on the other hand, you can bring so much specialness to a genre that you genuinely love because you understand that it's more than just the pieces on a page. It's the heart and the emotion. And that could be whether it's like edge of your seat, as soon as you think it's going to be resolved, they pull you back and you love that feeling of tension. I do not like that feeling of tension. It gives me anxiety. But there's other things that I do love. I love running jokes. I mean, it doesn't have to even be a good running joke. As long as it's a running joke, I feel like I love it. And so long series are good for me. I like zany characters. I love, you know, that moment of you think they're going to be defeated and they say, you know, not by my pretty blue bonnet or whatever, pretty flowered bonnet. I don't remember the line, so I just ruined it. But anyway, the idea is that in the face of danger, you've not lost your sense of humor. And so I encourage you to look at genres that you really love and to remind yourself why you love them and what you can bring to it. So an example that I've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of times, most people who've been around for a long period of time and have been in large writer groups see, is someone will come in, and say, romance is dumb, but it makes a ton of money, so if I just throw some sex on a page, I should make millions. And inevitably, they end up missing the exact things that romance writers, that romance readers love. And it's hard to explain to them in terms why their storylines are missing. Like, why isn't, sure, they get together at the end of the book, but no one's buying it, and no one likes the guy, and no one likes the girl, and stuff like that. And so I've seen a lot of people come into a genre, and they say, hey, I'm going to try doing this. And you're like, oh, okay, so what are your favorite authors? Because that kind of helps you, even in a genre like cozy mystery, which is already a subgenre of mystery, which is already a subgenre of the thriller, mystery, suspense category, you know, there's still a ton of subgenres, subgenres within that. And so you ask them, well, what do you read? I haven't really read any, but as near as I can tell, they're just a mystery with that are kind of funny with no with an amateur sleuth. And you're like, oh, well, kind of. And then they end up with this story that I go, well, what's your hook? And because they just don't understand how it comes together because they've never read them, and so they don't know. I mean, it could be a good book, but you're gonna have a hard time marketing it. And one of the other advantages of being in a genre that is marketable is, well, that is popular, is not just how many readers are coming into it, but you have a certain advantage when there's authors that want to sell their books, and you can all cluster together and work together. So an example I came up with, I have 3 kind of subgenres, from super, super established, sort of emerging, popular, to doesn't really exist yet, which is, I have cozy mysteries, contemporary, real life, sort of niche. They're very popular to have sort of a theme to them, like coffee grinding or wine making. In my case, it's competitive archery. And I can find a lot of promotional opportunities for funny contemporary. Moving over, I have a paranormal cozy, which means that I can, of course, get into, there are paranormal, because there's enough of a market and enough authors, I can get into a marketing group that is just for that genre. And we've done anthologies together, and one of my biggest single ROI money makers is these anthologies that we do like every Halloween, because they're kind of, you know, they're witches, so Halloweenish. We can get together and do newsletter builders, we can do giveaways, we can do Facebook hops, and that is because I've gotten this kind of this core niche group of people that all write in it. So we all can trust each other. We've got, you know, we have, our readership is shared, okay? The last one I have, which is a passion project, and I knew there wasn't a genre for it, is space murder. And there's a video specifically about space murder and how I came up with it. And it was just, truthfully, I was working through some emotions. I still am. And I needed to get this book out of my mind, out of my head, and onto the page, because once I do that, it's like I've opened up space in my brain for new projects. So I wrote this book. It is very well reviewed, which does not make up for the fact that it is not selling. And part of it is there are other space cozies, literally a handful. I think there's only one author I follow who is genuinely making money at them. Even space kind of comedies, there's another half dozen people, but we are not talking about a large group of people who can work together. So it is, even when I get a few more books out, it's going to be significantly harder for me to market because there's not an eager readership. I've got to teach them I've got to create a need that people, you know, do you want to break from your gritty space stuff? Try this. Do you love this tone and want to try a space book? Okay, let's do that. So it's going to be a little bit harder. So that is my views on writing to market, and I hope it is really useful for you as you are considering either what to write or how to market your book. Thank you.